Good morning from the East Coast, anyways. Um, so, based off of Brett's stream yesterday, towards the end, I started having a couple of thoughts about sort of, you know, my personal faith journey and what seems to still be sort of, I guess, like getting in the way of that. And the big thing that's come up in my life, just in general, but then also as it pertains to faith, is this idea of expectation. And so I kind of wanted to do a little bit of like a compare and contrast as to what like expectation is versus what faith is, because as I'm thinking about it, they seem a little bit more connected or a little bit more overlapped than I thought they'd be, which means for me, they get a little bit sticky, a little bit dangerous. And so I looked up the definition, on like Wikipedia, essentially, of like, what's the most formal definition of like expectations. And it's strong beliefs about what will happen or what should happen, specifically in the future, as it pertains to these ideas of anticipation or looking ahead under some specific standard or rules with a hope of gain, aka a prospect of future. And what that kind of sounded like to me was like really based in like faith or salvation of some sort. And I know that it's not specifically that, but it seems to very much overlap those sort of ideas. And I think that there's like, I'm trying to figure out what the difference in having an expectation is versus having a belief, because it feels like there's a like a control aspect when it comes to expectation, and there's almost like a giving up to, or like a humbling, or a uh, I forget what it's called, but just a surrendering when it comes to faith. And so it's like a very, very close, fine line between the two. And I think me personally, when I stay in this realm of expectation, is where sin and resentment and all of that sort of builds. Whereas in faith, it seems like there's like a different stance. And so, as we were talking yesterday, almost about because I think a lot of what faith is, at least for me, is like relationship, is that when I have some sort of expectation of what this relationship is supposed to mean to me, or how it's supposed to look or feel or whatnot, that's when I get into the realm of it's not a faith-based practice. It seems to be kind of falling out of line of what I'm actually looking for. And so I kind of just wanted to riff a little bit on these ideas and see if you guys can enlighten me a little bit.
What were you saying the definition of faith is for you?
Well, so I guess I didn't say a definition of faith, but I would say something along the lines of like trusting in the sovereignty of God, or like integrity of like the journey, but in a place of uncertainty. So like without that like definition of like some sort of specific I don't know, expectation or certain yeah, like certain expectation. But the hard thing is, I feel like when we talk about faith, or when we talk about, salvation, for example, like there seems to be some sort of underlying like goal or like desired outcome. Um, and so it's hard for me to say that faith doesn't have some sort of element of expectation to it. There's an uncertainty to it, but there seems to be some sort of underlying expectation to it. And so I'm thinking that I'm probably thinking of faith poorly in that way, or wrong in that way.
It
Uh,
seems there's a like just from a vibes perspective, like for you it feels like uh, expectation, bad faith, good, and you're trying, but they're super similar, and so you're trying to dis distinguish between them.
I feel like they take a different like posture. It's almost like they're looking at the world with like a sense of controlling. It seems like to be an expectation posture, whereas like faith takes more of like a submissive or surrendering sort of like posture, like like a lack, a knowing of a lack of control. And so I think it's, but ultimately I think they're sort of looking at the same thing. It's just, am I rigid when I'm looking at it, or am I like soft when I'm looking at it? If that
Hmm.
sort of tracks.
so this is for first of all, the question is great. A couple years ago, handful of years ago, I was wrestling with um, these stories where people almost commanded God to do something. And I thought, man, that's freaking bold. Like, and while while you were talking, an interesting connection came to mind in your distinction because a lot of the words that were in that definition for expectation reminded me of faith. And the thought that I had was a marriage, or even one step removed from that, a business contract. So when you enter into the business contract or the marriage, right, that's kind of what I feel like you're the faith. Like you're walking into that with faith, but there's a set bound of expectations that this relationship not just expects but requires in order to be functional. So, for instance, in a marriage, I enter the marriage and my wife has the expectation that I will not step outside of that marriage for certain satisfactions, we'll say,
Mm.
right? That's an expectation that she is trusting me to perform, right? But at the like to take that initial vow requires faith, something like that. And it's similar to a business arrangement, right? We're going to go into partnership. These are our goals. And in order to accomplish those goals, these are the expectations for which we will behave with one another.
Mm.
And then if we take that to another level with God, we are in a covenant relationship with Him. There are expectations to the behaviors, not just on my part, but also on His. So
Right.
that's kind of where my brain went with a great question, Megan.
Because no, because you're so right, Scott. Like it's I don't feel like there shouldn't be expectations. Like I think that's where the standards of goodness, or like I think that's like if I'm in a proper relationship with anyone, not just like God, but like there is some, like if I want the the best out of that relation, there is like some sort of standard I feel like that it's like held under. And I feel like that's what almost makes it, just like in, you know, when OG Rose talks about like limits, it's almost like something within those limits allows for the freedom and beauty to sort of like reveal itself. And so even in a divine relationship, I think there's some sort of like falling under this like veil of, I don't know, standards or goodness or values, so that you sort of know knowingly like in your body that it's like that it's right or good, or that it brings out that beauty. And so it's just interesting because I think the way, and I think Chad is right by saying like you shouldn't be tied too much to the results of expectations. But I I don't know. It's like at some point along the line, if you keep those as like if you keep the expectations and those turn into God or those become the highest value, then that's when it sort of breaks down. And so like at what point do those, values or expectations almost like fall like under something bigger or something like that? Yeah, go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I think you're right. I think that the word expectation has probably gotten one of those words that gotten more of a bad rap than it deserved, maybe. But I guess I would say unspoken entitlement is what I would say. I would say that when the expectation turns into I'm entitled to this, is
Mm,
where it starts to get a little bit uh, distorted. You know what I mean? So like we were kidding around at the end of the last stream about a husband has an expectation of what his wife looks like, how she's gonna act as a wife, and because that's what he was raised, how he was raised. This is what a wife looks like, and a husband. This is what a husband looks like, and this is how I expect a husband to be. And they
mhm,
may be on the same page, but then again, if that's kind of why they do marriage premarital counseling. It's like it's kind of to hash out some of the stuff that you might think is your ideal situation or the dream of what you think a wife or a husband look like, and then you sit down and you realize, whoa, I didn't realize you expect us to be driving a sports car, or I didn't realize you expected us to have a two-story house. You know, even maybe didn't even talk about how many kids they were going to have. So like when expectations turns into a an entitlement, like this is what I'm entitled to, and I think you could transfer that over into also expectations of God. It's like, yeah, they expected the Messiah, right? Like they hoped
mm,
for the Messiah. The hope is a really good synonym for the expectation type, language, for the good stuff, the power, So like when you get
mhm,
into an entitlement thing, I do agree with Scott. I think that when you have a covenant, again, you have to be on the same page as what this covenant means, right? What does this vow mean to you? What does it mean to me? Because if you just don't speak it and you don't communicate that, right? So I think with God, it's the covenants in the Bible, right? I mean, we see what the covenant is. He's promised certain things, and he's promised not to leave us, promised not to forsake us, promised to continue the good works he started in us. So I think that would be probably a better way to frame what we were talking about the other day, because I think we just went right to uh, expectation bad, and that was probably not the right way to frame that, I guess.
mm,
That picture of the Messiah and what they expected was great.
mm. I know you're a little busy, Olson, but just let us know if you have any feedback on this. You're welcome to jump in whenever.
Yeah, no, no, you guys, I'm enjoying hearing what you guys are saying. So I don't have any thoughts to push it forward. You guys are doing great.
Sweet. Appreciate the encouragement. What the
I
one
would,
thing? Go for it.
well, I was just thinking about that Messiah thing too. Like, there's almost a sense of pride that
Mm-hmm.
comes if, and I think this is what Brett was pointing to is like when those expectations, the way we've been terming it is when it becomes the thing as opposed to the relationship. Um,
Right.
but a lot of them that they knew this is what the Messiah looks like. This is what he's gonna do. We're gonna get our just desserts. Like, you know, um, yeah. That's I wanted to throw that pride thing in there because I think that has a lot to do with sullying the relationship when I demand for myself a certain thing out of the relationship.
Mm.
That's where it goes wrong.
Yeah, it also kind of reminds me of like when we were talking about the church deconstruction stuff. It's like people that have this bar that they set for a church, or like in the case with the Messiah, they had this bar they were setting for what the Messiah was going to do when he came, and that wasn't what he was going to do. This wasn't what it, and it was like he was upending their entire belief structure as to what was important, and I think that's probably internally where people struggle the most. It seems. I mean, it seems like if I'm holding a church or even church leaders to a standard, I don't think that it's bad to have a healthy hope or expectation that they behave a certain way. And when they fail, there should be consequences for the failure. I mean, they should be held accountable. Um, but I guess sometimes it almost seems like if we're talking about like those type of people that are deconstructing, they're looking at the those people as not human almost, like not fallible, like they're just not going to have an issue, they're not going to fail. The human element is prone to making error, and so without I don't know. It seems to me like when I hear people tell me what they think a church should be like, or how the people in the church should behave, it seems like they're holding a bar that's even higher than they're willing to be at. Like they want
You
to
mean like a
he
standard that even like humans aren't really even supposed to meet at some point? Like
it,
it's almost
well,
like
they make it out to be like it's like, yeah, we should be helping the poor and helping the orphans and helping the widows. I'm like, of course we should. It's like, yeah, and you should head something up and help that program out. But it's like they just go there, sit, and they watch, and they wait for some help. And again, I'm not saying there aren't cases where churches fail. They don't have a good ministry to reach out to those people that are there. And those churches should be awakened in the conversation. And like, it's kind of like when they get care, like what Scott was saying, it's like the thing becomes the thing. It's like what we're doing is the thing, not what we're how we're doing the work of the church becomes the thing, instead of the outward work of the church doesn't become the thing. So there's churches that do that, and
mm,
that's unfortunate. But to hold all churches and say none of the churches are doing good for these people, and I wouldn't think it's not. I don't think it's a fair. I would say the majority of them actually are. It's just, in our small slice where we live, or the experience that we had around a church or churches can sometimes be very bad, and it's not, it does harm. It does harm, and yeah.
Was so the two words were faith and expectation, is that right?
yeah, for the moment, yeah.
Um good. Um I
Yes.
kind of I kind of as you guys are talking, I'm thinking about it. And I've actually gone through a couple iterations, so this could and some of them are wrong. So this could be wrong too. Um it seems like faith is like you're choosing, there's something outside of you that you're choosing to believe in, that it will be true to it'll be true to what it is. And so there's like a outside, like things outside. And so what's going to happen is based off of the properties of that thing. Whereas expectation seems to be like something that comes from inside yourself that is then projected out to other things. which can be good or it can be bad. Like as a parent or a teacher or friend or whatever. Like we could have expectations of how people in our lives should act, or like my students, I have expectations. Like I'm not a teacher anymore. When I had students, like, hey, I'm expecting you to meet this level of decorum in the class and respect to other students, and if you don't, then there's going to be
Mhm.
consequences or whatever. We're gonna have a talk or things. Same with spouses and stuff like that. So sometimes they can be good, sometimes it could be bad. um and I think we're also mixing in the idea and word hope within there, and sometimes we're interchanging hope and expectation and faith and hope and stuff like that. So we gotta be careful with that.
Yeah.
um they are slightly different, right? So faith, again, is the thing being true to itself, and I'm gonna be, but hope is more future oriented. um in that, I guess it's the applicable action of your faith. I don't know. I had it worked out once. I had a whole like I had a whole analogy story of like Jesus on a horse, and he was like
Mhm.
helping you out. It was like in college, so it was a long time ago. I, I've had a lot of sleepless nights to forget it.
Yeah, that's a good thing. That's a good distinction to make, Olsen, because I think that's where, for me, these like definitions become like a little cloudy, and then they also then become like more necessary. But then once you fully define something, then you like get stuck in that, and then like I think the cycle kind of like goes over again. At least for me, when it comes to like definitions, it's like all of a sudden then you're caught into it again, and you're almost like looking for it. And I think, and maybe that's like this like humanness that I'm trying to talk about, is like we have some sort of like baseline. I guess I don't know if they're like assumptions more than expectations, of like how the world work. Like we assume like when we walk out the door, gravity's still going to be there. We assume our heart's still going to be like beating. There's like some sort of expectation that without doing anything, certain things will fall into place. And how is that different for me in my mind? How is that trusting that my heart is going to continue to beat whether I'm thinking about it or not? How different is that than like faith? And I think there's like something about it that feels relational. But then in my human idea of relation, it's like obviously, and I mean, I feel like I throw this word around too much, but like it's like obviously a fallen version of the relationship that I feel like I'm supposed to be aiming at. Like my relationship with Brett ought be, I think, a different type of relationship than me with God, right? Like there should be a different set of quote unquote expectations or assumptions that I have with Brett than I have with God. Or should I? Are those that different? Those for me are like where the humanness sort of like comes into play, where it's like, is it I'm is it because of the way I am structured in this like literal form, that like is keeping me from having these like more transcendent divine relationships? Or should that be how I have relationship with everything in on this earth? Does that make sense? Anybody?
What's coming to mind? So, look, this could be a little bit out there, but I've been looking for the pattern of the Trinity in as many things as I can. And what's coming to mind now is, especially with the outside of yourself, from yourself kind of thing that Olson put together,
Mm-hmm.
is faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. And what came to mind was this idea of, with what Olson said, that faith is something that is maybe from outside of you. Hope is from inside of you. And love is what is born out of that right relationship. And so you can kind of map that to the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, in that the Spirit is the love that's born out of a right relationship with proper expectations in their right place in a relationship, especially, well, no, but I'll just put that on there. See what you guys can do with that.
My only like hesitation on that is that like there seems to be some sort of, I don't know, ability to like manipulate that. And I think manipulation is one of those words that also comes off as negative. I'm not trying to say that this is a negative thing. I think that like we use language to manipulate other people, like in a proper way too. But I feel like there's some sort of like manipulation of like, oh, can I create an environment where love exists? And so like in that like manipulation of the environment, is that like, is that me, you know, like taking, you know, using my will, or is that me trying to control and thus like falling out of faith type of thing? At what point does that sort of become, I'm expecting love and so I'm going to make a place of love? Or it, does that make sense? Like at what point does is it like a fallen idea? Or at least that's what
I
comes
feel
to mind for me.
so. I feel like having an expectation uh, or faith in a person versus faith in God, right? So faith in God is clearly like this much perfect ideal thing. It's because He is perfect, right? But having faith in a person, we can be wrong. We can put faith in the wrong person, you know, and or they can let us down. And then getting back to what Scott was saying, love is the response to that, right? I mean, ultimately, if we're doing it perfect, I mean, if you know, and I don't claim to do it perfect, you know. um, I guess, yeah, I guess the struggle that I probably have is usually when it's applied to the institution of the church based on the church body, you know, and not living up to what how I see them to be. And I'm like I've fallen into that. You know, I've gotten into my church and you know, would be critical or I'd be judgmental of certain people. Just the other day, I was giving somebody a hard time. I wasn't giving them a hard time. I did it very tactfully. I just said, it seems like you guys are more interested in doing the thing, the busy work, and you're forgetting why we're even here. You know, like we're here to enjoy the service and be and praise God, but it seems like you're more tied up in the work of praising God, like the behind the scenes stuff. And that would probably be fine, you know, if you had like maybe two services where you could go get fed and you could serve, right? You know, like so that you had a place where you were going to get fed. But in a lot of churches, they don't have multiple services. And so, like, you know, they're only doing the busy work and they never sit and actually enjoy the service and worship in their own thing. Now, when you're a pastor, there is a little bit of a separation, right? You're being a pastor, so you're not exactly going to just be able to sit there and take. That's why they have pastor conferences. They try to build up pastors and they do these things like that to help them. So I'm just saying, like, I had an expectation that we should be here to, you know, of these people, that we should be here to do the thing that we're supposed to be doing, not, you know, when everybody goes to pray, you guys are running around the church trying to get in position to do whatever you're going to do. It's like, wait, we're praying, man. Like, stop and pray. It used to annoy me because I'd have my eyes closed and I could hear scuffling about. And I'm like, and so again, I'm not, I even if I think I'm right, my expectation of them and their walk in Christ and where they are in their journey, or even how the church is handling the workers, was superseding, you know, was an expectation that wasn't necessarily fair. I'm not saying that it wasn't warranted. I'm just saying everybody has their own journey. And so, like, my particular pastor, he's very hands off. He's like, I'm not going to be reprimanding everybody for all the things that they do. And it used to annoy me, but now I'm starting to see some of these people growing in their faith. And so, like, now I start to see some of them are stopping and praying. It's almost like, I don't even know. It's maybe it's the Holy Spirit working in their life, or maybe they're seeing other people participating and they're like, I kind of want to do that thing they're doing. You know what I mean? And so I don't know. I just realized though that I'm putting too much expectation on individuals in the church. But if I was using that as my lens as to why this is a good church, and these people are good, and I don't feel like they're getting it here, and I'm not going to be at this church. I'm leaving. That's where
Mhm.
I guess my heart breaks on the deconstruction part. There's more valid reasons for deconstruction, I would say, why people had struggled and go through a process of seeing if what they're being taught is what the Bible says. Like, that makes sense to me. Like, be a Berean, scour the scriptures, see if this is what's actually being said, as opposed to just taking it wholesale. So yeah, exactly. It's hard to do, man. So hard to do.
I'm thinking even about your relationships at work or something too. Like same thing. Both from maybe your employer having these crazy expectations about what exactly is supposed to get done without you know kind of putting into context the situations that have occurred, or whatever, like the expectation when that it's very easy to get hyper focused on the checkboxness, kind of what you're talking about there, Brett, as opposed to what is the goal of our completion of work today, right? um the goal is to get the product from the back door to the front door,
Mm.
period, right? Like, and you can get so tied up in, like, you know who didn't do the boxes, or who didn't do, you know what I mean? And like that then becomes the like focus, and the ship gets steered off course because we're now hyper focused on the you know exact makeup of the coal getting thrown into the furnace, and now nobody's thrown coal in the furnace, and the ship's not going anywhere.
Yeah. So the thing that came to mind for me as you guys were talking is like, I feel like where I see God like the most working is either like in nature when I'm just sitting, or like through people, like in relation with people. But then we're talking about how like there's almost like a different type of faith in God versus like a faith in human, in man. It's like, and so if you're in relation and seeing God through man, at what point do you like almost take the expectation of God down, or take the expectation of man up, or like how do those come together? Beautiful. Like where does that happen? Someone
Forgiveness.
someone explain that to me, because it's like,
it, it,
how do I not over
I think.
expect or under expect? Like,
Well, no, I think it's right to have the expectation, but through a spirit of forgiveness, because we're gonna fail. That's why it's such a cornerstone,
but
is
is the
forgiveness.
expectation that it's gonna fail? You know what I mean? Like, am I already going in saying like, oh, well, I don't
Yeah.
expect it to go right, so I'm almost expecting it to go wrong. Like, it, that's not
No.
a
Yeah.
one for one, but like,
Well. Again, that's putting more emphasis on the expectation rather than the goal. rather than the bigger thing, right? So it's just,
So how do you look at reality properly? How do you look at what's in front of you properly? That's
How?
my yeah.
No, that's a great question. This is that's a wonderful.
Yeah.
How does God still love us? Like, right? Like
he seems to still.
I don't know
he,
how.
yeah, right. And so I think if we all have that the divine breath of of the spirit in our lungs, right? Like that's I think that's how we should view each other as we try to, right? Jesus says, "Love as I have loved you." And how does God love us?
Despite our failings.
Even while we are still sinners, he died on a cross.
God love us. I mean, sure hope so, but maybe not.
Mine
That's my
does.
yeah,
I
that's
don't
my
know.
that's
I
that's
feel
hope.
like I saw a pretty good example of it on the cross.
So unconditionally is an interesting word
Mm-hmm.
because we're talking about a covenant usually, and that's more like a contract, which requires conditions. So I don't know for sure.
Don't ask the tulip guy.
But here's and don't ask the tulip guy. Here's here's the other thing with that though is right as we try to love others, right? Obviously, there's going to be, as Scott was saying, 100%. There's going to be part of it's forgiveness, or I'd say grace, but I think we're speaking to the same thing there. Um, we then need to know that we're not God, and so as we're trying to love others as God has loved us, we're gonna do that so poorly. We gotta view ourselves in light of God's grace as well.
Yeah.
And so as we're trying to love and we're like, man, I really thought I loved that person well. And they turn around and like, man, you did not love me well. And so that shouldn't stop us. That shouldn't put the barrier to inaction, right?
Mm-hmm.
My fear of not being able to love somebody well should not be a barrier to trying to love them.
You know what it reminded me of is, and we've talked about this before, is and since we're using the analogy of God and us, right? And the analogy he uses is, or the metaphor is that we are the bride of Christ, right? So when you think about a marriage, you always hear in modern psychology, hey, this is a 50-50 thing in this relationship, and I've said before, like the way you beat the curse is not looking at it as a 50-50 thing. It's 100%. You're giving 100% of your love and you're not counting the other side at all. What because they're going to fall short of that 100% at some point. And if you're like, well, you're only giving so much, so I'm going to give the same amount that you're giving. Now would that be considered love? It's like, I'm gonna equal things out and only do as much as you're doing until you step up to the plate and do a little bit more loving. You know what I mean? And but it's like it's like the getting into someone's head and their motives and understanding what they're going through, even if they're not able to vocalize it. It's like kind of an unfair thing. So it's like, to beat that, I've got to bring all the love and not care whether I'm going to be getting it in return. Which sounds, you could take that to an unhealthy place, clearly, right? To where somebody's literally taking advantage of you and they're not in this. But if you guys, like in a marriage, you made a vow, you know, and through sickness and health. And I would assume that there's times where that vow starts to fall apart because maybe there's some sickness, whether it's emotionally and mentally or whether it's physically, and it just feels like they're not living up to this bargain that we struck, but yet maybe they are, and you're just holding them to this unrealistic, you know expectation. So that's why I think when it comes to God and us, it's a different thing because he's never going to fail the 100%, not when it comes to his children, you know and so, like, that's why there is a differentiation between this word love and hate. Why they used hate, because they had to show this extreme differential between how much he loves his children versus how much he despises people that go against him, per se. But the despising is still not hate, it's love differently. They're still allowed to breathe even though they defy God, because if he really wanted to, he could just smite them right off the planet, but that's not what he chooses to do. He loves them in a different way. So it's like his love is so much better than ours. And this may sound pie in the sky, this may sound pastory, this whatever. I'm just saying it's really obvious that he is such a loving God, and his relationship to us means so much that he was willing to send his son to die on a cross for our sins. You know what I mean? So, like, that to me is the supreme example of sacrificial love, you know, and believing that this is how it is. This is the relationship I have with him. So, like, when I start bringing that stuff down on man, that's just not a bar that I think any man can live up to. I mean, there's some saintly people in life that have lived lives that, outwardly been amazing, right? Mother Teresa was a good example of that. Olson reminds me of Mother Teresa, but whatever.
No,
I get,
no,
keep your
no,
humility, keep your
no.
humility down.
That
Here's what
is
I'm saying,
that
but
is
I'm saying, what happened
This
when
is
we
a
got
focus that
that
on
is the
me.
what
dumbest thing you've
what
said ever.
what happened when we saw Mother Teresa's journals? We got to see her anger with God. We got to see her doubt in God at times. And so, like, it's like, here's somebody that's displaying one thing that for years we just thought this is like the perfect person, right? But then we got to see her inner thoughts and the things she struggled with and that she didn't allow to manifest outside of her into other people, and how she maybe responded to other people. I don't know.
God, I know you're kind of at your end of your time.
Yeah,
Do you have something to say? Yeah.
I think this was a great conversation. Thank you, Megan, for bringing it. Thank you guys for your input. I think this was a good one. I
Yeah.
appreciate you. Have a good
Yeah.
day.
Thanks, Scott. Good luck. I don't know. This is where I like know that I'm God, that I have doubts and that my faith is weak. It's like right in this conversation because I'm just like sitting here and like I want to believe that what you say is true, Brett. I do. I just it is I because I can't see it, because I can't put it into like a human form that like I can like see, like I find it just impossible to think that someone can love me, something, somewhat can love me that much. Like I'm like that's impossible. And so I can't think of him as a man. I can't put him in a box like that, because as soon as I think that he has the capacity to love versus just being all that love is, then I can't like, and even that, like that sounds ridiculous when I say that out loud too. But like if I put any sort of potential for slippery slope into a personhood for like that divine relationship, I it does, it just like doesn't make sense to me. I'm like I cannot believe it. Even if I can say it in my mind away, my body like fully rejects that. And it happens in my like I'll see it in my life. I'm like, oh, I obviously did not believe that. I obviously did not believe that because of the way I just walked into this room, the way I just walked, whatever. Um, and so, yeah, there's an obvious like. That's why I think there has to be an expectation within me because I almost like need it to meet this standard, or else my body's like, no. And so, like, what is that? Where does that exist? Is that a right thing to have? I don't know, but I think my idea of like fairness, as in it has to make sense-ness, is like the fairness that I seem to hold close to me. Like that gets in the way of me believing in something, me like surrendering to something bigger than me. And it's like,
What do you
ugh,
think is unfair?
that it
Because I,
can't
I
be
I have things.
that we can't believe, like it can't be known, like just allow it to be known to me, and I'm good, but then that like is literally the opposite of what belief is, like oh, if I know it, then I can believe it, like that's literally like, yeah, it's, I don't know, I
But
think it's like,
apparently, Claire has all the answers for you. It's
she
so very
is, I was
simple.
gonna say she
It's so
is
simple. She has
actually,
all the answers. She just wants to tell you all the right
if you
answers.
guys would like
Yeah.
to discuss for the
Hell
last
no.
12
No, Megan, that was beautiful. That was really well articulated. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Um, that yeah, that's the crux, man. Like where biology meets the supra above
yeah,
above like life. Um, yeah, I I had I was going like when I was in college, one of my first years of college, I was wrestling with just life and things, and I had all these friends who had had all these like mystical experiences, and I never had anything, and so I was really mad at God, and I was like, just reveal yourself. Like ever since I was a little kid, I remember like when I was like 3 or 4 years old, I'd lay in my bed and I'm like, somebody had once told me God is the greatest thing you could ever see or imagine. Like it's the greatest, it's the most perfect thing you could ever think. And so in my little kid head, I was just like, God, if I could just see you for 1 second, like that's all I
just,
need. Just
that's
one
it,
second. That's all I want. Just 1 second. And I'd get kind of like mad and cry, like, God, I just really want to see you for 1 second. That would be so amazing. And and now I look back, I'm like, man, what great faith. What great like that desire. Like holding it, yeah. So anyways, so then fast forward, I didn't see him. I didn't get my 1 second. And and so then all my friends are having these amazing 1 second or more experiences, and I'm just like, what's wrong with me? Like, am I just like that bad, that sinful, like that messed up? Like, do I not have that much faith? And and I got really angry with him one day, and like literal like yelling. I went to a park. I looked like a crazy guy. I mean, I often look like a crazy guy, but even more than normal. And and there's just nothing. There's crickets. And I went home and I went to read a book that I probably shouldn't have been reading. Like not shouldn't have, like it was a bad book, but like there was no reason for me to have had that book at that time and place. Um and it was like one character was just interacting with a fake, it was like a fantasy book, and so there were like these fake gods or whatever, and the god was questioning the character, and the character's like, I just have faith, I just have faith, and that was it. That was the end of the chapter. It's like, I just have faith. And and I was like, okay, well, I didn't see you, but I feel like I know what you're trying to do here. And so for the longest time, like that was what I lived off of, was just like, I don't see him, but I'm gonna try to live my life the best way that I can, as if I could see him. And then later on in my life, like part of the same question, it's part of the same wrestling. I'd always hoped and prayed for a certain thing for a long time, and it finally came to me, and I was getting to experience it, and then God literally like pulled me away from that. Like he's like, nope, this is not where you're gonna be. Like you prayed and cried for me to answer, right? It's like French had to do with like friendships and having close friends and stuff. And then he's like, nope, I'm moving you away to the farthest end of the world. And that was, and I was just like, man, like what is going on here? Because that's a good, right? That was a good friendship and community like that, and what they were doing, they were living out the Bible, right? We were, part of a community that was serving the poor and in the neighborhood and with them, not like being white whatever privileged people, because it wasn't just white people, um and like trying to really live that out. And I'm like, man, I'm really trying to live this out, and you're literally telling me to go somewhere else. And and I have to leave these friends in this community that I finally had, that I'd been wanting for so long. And and you and so I just wrestled with it. Like you just had to wrestle with that, because that was a good, like that was good stuff. So why did he take
This
me
is
away from that stuff?
this is what bothers me about that stuff. Like when, and this is what I said, or there was even a clip in that video I did yesterday about people holding up their testimony stories or showing God's amazing work in their life and everything. And it's like, it's almost implying that if you don't have this thing happen, that you can't have this relationship with Christ. Like, no, you've got to go through hell and be pulled out of the gutter, or you have to be a prisoner, an inmate, and that's the only way. Or, you get baptized and you're going to come out and you're going to feel like you have superpowers. And so, like, it's just this stuff that other people put on us as what this, and creates an expectation. If I don't feel these things, if I don't get this thing, if I'm not seeing what they're seeing, or I'm not seeing miracles and people being raised from the dead or whatever, that's the signal. That's how I know this is going to be. No, it's like, that's other people's experience, and I'm not
Right.
denying their experience, you know, but it doesn't have to be everybody's.
Yeah. So I think, y- yeah, I
Sorry,
agree
Mark.
with you. I agree with you, Brett, real quick. But let me get to the crux. Sorry, is that in the Bible, like we often have this expectation, and we had to go through this once I was married, too, is just with our story, right? There are good things that the Bible says is good, and for whatever reason, if we're unable to get that, then there's the expectation of comfort in His presence. But sometimes you're greeted with silence. And I mean, that's what Becky was talking about. People focus on that dream, the dream part. But what caused her to have the issue was that she was going through this hard time and there was silence and she heard nothing. And in terms of Mother Teresa, right? um, right, that was her thing. Is she heard God audibly a couple of times when she was younger, told her what to do, and then there was silence from then on. And um, and I think wrestling with that silence, I think, is what you're kind of getting at. It sounds like.
What you got, Mark?
So the can you hear me?
Yep.
So the bit you said before the guy started talking, what I heard you say was completely different to what the guys were saying. And it seems to be completely different to what was said in the comments. And I've been pondering this idea that we hear, or we selectively hear, and it's not a new idea. It's not, I came up with it. It's just really curious. Because what I heard you say was, I'm not worthy of God's love.
I wouldn't disagree with that. I think that's been a little bit of a narrative recently. Yeah.
I think the rest of us would disagree with it. I had this, I communicated with this on email with this guy in Australia. And I think he's a priest or something, not sure. Very nice man. And I went off, did something else, came back, checked my emails, and his email reply was kind of on the screen. So I read it again, and I suddenly thought, there are some really beautiful people in this world. And just that thought lifted me up. I wanted to say something to Olson as well, if he's listening.
He's listening.
So we had this weird thing where we jumped on Brett's live stream, and then Brett disappeared, and me and Olson just chatted for a bit, because why not? And we talked about his name, which I heard is Scandinavian. And then I said maybe it was originally like an O with 2 dots above, which makes it Earlson. And I was racking my head thinking, what is Earl? And yesterday or Sunday, it hit me. Oh, that's the Swedish word for beer. So if it's an O with 2 dots, he is son of beer.
Went from Mother Teresa to son of beer. That is that is a full character arc right there.
I honestly think, Megan, believe it or not, how you feel about being unworthy, even if you feel that way, it doesn't mean that you are, right? So like, you can feel unworthy. I almost feel like it's kind of a humble place to be, but knowing that he sees you as worthy of his love, he sees you as worthy of sending his son to interact with us and know him and get to know him in a man-like way, but in a perfect man-like way that we can't even comprehend. It's hard to comprehend this idea of a person being perfect. It's just because it doesn't exist, right? So I don't know. I just think, and I use that story, remember the Christmas story with the birds, and it's like, how do I communicate with these birds? And if only I could become a bird, and then they could see me and I could communicate with them. It's like I could display what I'm trying to convey. And it's like, that's what Christ did. He incarnated, he the word's been used before, he condescended to us so that we could know him. And I mean, like, the idea of that in it of itself is just kind of surreal when you think about it. So like, I mean, internally, how special you are, and how wonderful you are. And just to think that he made you that way, he planned your path so that you could build your formation in the precise way that you have to meet him on that road in a way, and gives you gifts that other people don't have, that you're going to be able to use in ways that maybe even now you can't even comprehend. That's going to be the special moment, that I think we all kind of ultimately will get to the point where, like, I use the analogy. I try to talk. I know we're going long, but it's like the job that I have right now. It seems like it's like it seems too good to be true, But it's like now I start seeing the value of me operating a crane in my life, the value of me having a CDL and operating semis, the value of me being a salesperson. Like all these little dumb jobs I had over my entire life have all consolidated into this one type of job that is going to maybe help me relate to the drivers that I'm talking to and the clients that need a good price. You know what I mean? So it's just
Yeah.
wild to think that all that crap that I had to go through and do that didn't become a job that was fulfilling or good, maybe, you know? So it's just kind of like, I don't know, trust in the plan.
Mm.
You're
I have a
doing
slightly
good.
more simple answer. You're alive.
You always have a,
That's a
oh, that's
miracle.
a good one. Yeah.
Just
You
going
don't
back to
need more than
miracles.
that. You're
Yeah.
alive.
10
Like,
fingers, 10
wow.
toes.
Yeah. Well, there's some pretty gross parasites and nasty things that are also alive. So I don't know. Like at some point, I'm like, God allows those things to live too. So, and which am I? I don't know. Each moment, I tend to be very convinced of one or the other. So,
I think it's pretty good that you
Well,
even care
it's
about
good
these
to be in
things.
question.
Yeah.
It's good to be
I
in
think I
question.
don't know. I feel like if you don't have doubts, then you don't really have faith. And so, like, and I'm not doubting so that I have faith. Like, I if I I don't think so. I think I'm just yeah.
100%.
We're kind of
It's
wrapping
good
up
to
on.
doubt. It's good to be in question. The creepy crawlies of the world have their place,
Mm.
and birds certainly enjoy them, and I enjoy birds. So, everything's cool. We just have this fear of spiders, for example. That doesn't make sense. I hate flies. There, I confess. I said it. So I like spiders.
Yeah, yeah. I allow spiders in my house because it keeps away the creepy crawlies that I don't like as much. So pick and choose your own creepy crawlies, I suppose. Um,
It's all
so
good.
a couple things. I'm seriously open if anyone wants to continue to stick around and like chat a little bit more. We could do it online or offline. I think Chris is probably starting somewhere soon. So yeah, I'm taking a vote. Does people want to keep going? I haven't seen Chris come up yet. I see Chad in the backstage.
Yeah, let's talk until I see Chris's thing. I'll jump off then, and then you can have
Okay.
whatever conversations you want.
And then after that, probably offline, I'll probably still stay on this stream. So if anyone wants to stay on and talk, I will be probably talking to Claire. So if anyone wants to jump on that. But anyways, Chad, what do you got?
I was just thinking about the creepy crawlies, like this, this like theology that Mark talks about is frustrating to me because, well, it's one that I've lived by for a while, and it's one that I kind of understood, but like once you start to like open your eyes and see people, like there's those people that I don't know where, I don't know, a couple states over, like a guy and a gal who was abducting women and their bodies are like in barrels that are like dissolving and there's 60,000 images of dead people and bad videos, like, come on, dude. Like,
Okay.
so that's why I don't I think that this kind of bullshit theology of, well, you're alive and and people, it's like the I think that the tendency to assume that I'm likely to disappoint
Mm.
God is probably a better move, and that I ought to strive to see where I can repent, and that God doesn't have unconditional love. That is just, I don't know where we came up with this bullshit of unconditional love. It is bullshit. Um, and well, unless of course he wants to have unconditional love. I mean, if that's the case, then that's fine. I just don't know. Like, I don't know if I have the kind of capacity to even understand what unconditional love means. So I probably shouldn't say it because it's stupid. And um,
Would you say that you have conditional love for your daughter versus unconditional love? Not to put you on the spot, but like this, the only thing I think of
okay,
when I think of the
yesterday
possibility is from parent to child.
we were walking on the block yesterday, and I was getting pissed off at her. I was getting pretty pissed um, over some petty shit. So no, I don't know it. And I like to think that I have unconditional love, but I don't think that's wise for me to say that I have it.
But is it something
Okay,
that
Chad,
you
let
have?
me
Like,
answer some of your points, please. So I said in the comments, I forget what I said, but isn't it curious that we refer to God as our Father? And so your relationship to your daughter, okay, you get a bit pissed at her sometimes because children can be annoying. Do you think the relationship with God is any different? Sometimes he gets upset with us, but
Do
the
we?
love is still
You want to start
unconditional.
talking
I'm
about
not
our
being
fathers?
sloppy here.
Because I don't know what a good. I don't know what that means either.
mm,
Because I've
mm.
had
Your
a real
father.
difficulty trying to even understand what a father is. Um, if God the Father is anything like my father, then you and I are all completely fucked.
Yeah,
So I
I
don't
think
know.
I think you're right, Chad. Unfortunately, the metaphor of God the Father, God the Son, it's like the best language he could give, and it's so insufficient. It really is because of our earthly fathers, not being what we wish them to be in a lot of cases, right? Um, and I think I probably have a better earthly father than most people have, and it sucks, and to have that word mess me up with God, it's unfair to God, right? It's
Part of the thing is, I think, like, I don't want to be a stumbling block for people. So I do, because I don't. Like, I have, I think at the core of what I believe is what Mark is saying. But sometimes the way that we present that is just so useless to people. And I think, like, the attitude is good. I understand that. But this is why I just assumed that. I think that I like the idea of, like, I made the joke about Hodor. I mean, that to me is if I assume that I'm uh, probably unworthy, I will probably fall short, and yet it is still my role that he would have me serve him and help my fellows. That has everything that it doesn't need unconditional love. It doesn't need anything it has. I have a role, and my job is to try to carry out that role, and that's what's important. And I don't have to earn his love because it's already there. Whatever. It doesn't. None of that matters. It's just like uh, that. I think that's what he would. That's his will for me. So I gotta get going because
Can I
I'm eating this
replace
breakfast.
the word role with duty?
Sure. Why?
Um, because to play a role is to act, whereas to duty is to serve. It's a very different
Mm.
idea.
I I mean, I think in some ways I agree with that, but I almost feel like, I think of roles as like, I play ultimate frisbee or used to before I hurt my knee. And there's like something about playing your role, where it actually is just you falling into where you energetically belong in the hierarchy. Like it's like a sense making mechanism. Like your role is not like a I'm trying to fit into something. It can be like, I think the way society uses roles, we're like, oh, fit into your role, and then they try to force you into a role. But I think what actually that means is like the what the ecosystem needs. Like you sort of like follow the, I don't know, the pressure system into the place where you are supposed to exist. And so I actually think following your role or living your role is like a non, like duty feels like you're intentionally trying to do something. Whereas like, I feel like filling your role can oftentimes just be a morphing into what is needed in the environment, it's like where you fit. And so it's less of a intentional thing. It's more of an outside thing saying, imposing its power onto you. And that could be a tyrannical power, or it could be just like a majestic, that which is bigger than you power that puts you in that role. Does that make sense? Whereas duty feels like you're like, it's an internal locus of control versus role is an external, like something over top of you. So I actually think
So
role could be very like just obedience, like just like being in what actually makes like overall sense.
So is that like saying, oh, you're the right size and structure to make a good quarterback, whereas this guy, basketball, that's your size and structure, that's where you fit in. Learn basketball,
Mm-hmm.
learn quarterback. I'm trying to use American terms, and I'm not American
You're doing great.
sports.
You're doing great.
I'm kind of big on conscience, and so I'm kind of big on choosing your role, choosing your duty.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the difference you were trying to make. Is like role is you are chosen, duty is you choose.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm more on the we should choose.
Hmm.
There are short basketball players.
I guess I just don't believe that we have the proper, I don't know, like the moral compass to be the ones that are choosing. Like I almost feel like it shouldn't be, or at least me, I don't feel like I should be choosing my role. Like
Then the world is finished.
I think I should be succumbing to the role that seems to have been decided for me. Like I think I should allow that role to be embodied. Like I think I should actively choose to submit to that role. But I don't think I should be the one to say that is my role. I think I should be able to recognize that that is my role, but I don't think I should be the one defining my role. Something more like
I,
that.
I
Okay,
think of
Brett,
the
just quickly. What do you want to do when you grow up?
Me?
Brett.
honestly, I got into this weird debate on a panel with atheists and agnostics and pan psychics, and for whatever the reason, they like talking with me.
What
You
is
know,
that?
it's like it's what Ian McGilchrist is. If you know who that is, that's what Ian McGilchrist is. But so like the whole idea is this: is that they asked the question, if you could go back in time in a time machine, in a hypothetical time machine, and go back and all conditions were the same, would you choose something different in like a pivotal moment in your life? And I'm thinking to myself, and we asked, do you have memory of the outcomes? And the guy was like, no, you don't have memory. Then I'm like, well, then I would choose the exact same thing. Why would I choose anything else? Because, you know, because his whole idea was we don't have free will if that's the case. And I said, no, that's not
Mm.
the case. I had free will to make that decision in the first place, and I thought it was the best decision for me, probably in most cases, right? And I made that choice, and I chose to do that thing. And so, would I go back and do things different? I mean, there are a lot of harms that I've caused in my life that I wish I hadn't, but I also know that that was the plan, and that plan did things that I'm not able to see, and I'm not able to comprehend the value of the negative outcome. Like there was something that God had me walk through. It sucked, and if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't be who I am today. And so I am kind of submitting to the role in life that I've been given and that I've also created, and know that outside of my free will and my plan, God had kind of had this all in mind, exactly what I was going to go through and how it was going to benefit me and benefit him in the long run. Reminds me of Paul, right? That's kind of, I really connect with Paul. He's killing Christians, he's imprisoning women and children for believing in Jesus. And he decides to take this guy and make him the main guy that's going to go to the Gentiles and spread the message, which is going to change the world. And so, if you were to say, well, I bet Paul would go back and not hold the cloaks when they were stoning Stephen. I bet he would not do that. It's like, well, would Paul be Paul? I mean, if he didn't have that experience and guilt and shame and the issues he went through. So, like, when you ask me, what do I want to be when I grow up? I would say exactly what I am, and that's still not even finished. You know what I mean? I'm still becoming, and experiencing the space with you guys. Like before, when I first started the TLC, my big worry was I was going to interact with people that were struggling with their faith, which is one thing, but then also um, being pressed on my beliefs. And what if I fell in love with these people emotionally? Could they sway me into their thought process? And it was like, that was like a ridiculous concern that I had, because I always came through the belief system that you become like the 6 people you hang out with the most. And so the whole idea is that if I'm literally putting that much, if that's where my faith resides, then what kind of faith is it? And so, like, as I've gotten in relationships online with everybody in the TLC, and I've learned that they're going to believe other things than me, and I can still love them, and I can, and what, if anything, it's actually cemented my faith more. If anything, it's made my how I see things even clearer, because it's kind of like there's this one type of person, and now I've spent enough time with them, or I've talked with them enough, and I can see how that worldview's failing, and for them, and as far as how I would want to live life, and how I'd want to be. And so, like, it's kind of like you don't know a crooked stick until you see a straight stick,
Right.
and so, and vice versa, and so, like, you're not thankful for your straight stick until you witness someone's crooked stick. So it's a horrible analogy, but you get my point.
I think so.
I see Chris
Um,
Howard just went up.
yeah, Chris Howard's coming on now. If we want to do last words, and then I will say, for anyone in the comment section who's like hasn't come on, I'm gonna end this stream, but my link will still be live for, I probably can go for another like 30 minutes. So if people want to chat offline, I'm super open to it. Would love people who like don't want to be seen on screen to come back and chat. Otherwise, I suggest going and listening to Chris Howard. And yeah, so if you guys have any final words, Chris and Brett, and then thank you for everyone who came on today. I thought this was a really good discussion. I'm actually really pumped about it. So hopefully you guys feel the same.
What do you got, Mark?
Well, there are some things that Chad said that he disagreed with me about, but they've dislodged from my memory, so I can't talk about them anymore. Maybe next time me and Chad can have a chat. But no final word. Sorry, nothing's coming to mind.
Well, we appreciate you being here, Mark.
I'll stay on for a little bit, but I need to get back to work, so not very long.
Lorica, are you going to be in the estuary with Teo? Me and B are going to be in it.
Yeah. Hope to see you there,
It's going to be
JR.
awesome. Yeah.
Great.
Anyway, yeah, man. Mark, I'll see you later, buddy. And I'll see everyone else later.
Sweet. And Grim, I think it is. I think my human expectations do seem to be suffocating my faith. So I'd say, at least for me, I feel like yes. And so how to release my human expectations, I don't know, given that I am human. But if you want to come backstage and chat with me about it, I'd love it. Otherwise, I'm going to end the stream. Pop on if you want to talk. Otherwise, go to Chris Howard. Peace, love, everybody. Appreciate you. Bye.